Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Alderman meeting report for this week's meeting. Really excited to be here, and we know we always say making this bigger and better for you guys in conjunction with the Branson Statesman, which is our publication that releases articles and videos, keeping all the citizens of Branson updated on what's going on in their city. So I want to start out with something that happened at the very, very beginning of the meeting. And that was the mayor asking that public comments relate specifically to the city of Branson. We have a lot of folks that come up and you can speak on any topic, and the mayor has always been from the moment he got elected about transparency and allowing more citizen voices as opposed to sort of the previous administration that was interested in limiting voices. There was a comment one time that said, tyrannical rule is often arbitrary. That's what makes it sort of tyrannical because it's not based on facts or a scientific method, but instead just sort of the whims of each leader. There were some quite arbitrary things that were happening last time, limiting them to 3 minutes. You can only live in the city limits of Branson, things like that. So, the mayor's not going down that road. But again, there are often people that come and they talk about, just all kinds of things, the UN and different things like that. And the mayor is asking that it only refers to things that involve Branson and things that our board of aldermen can actually do something about and can affect. And he also talked about consolidating items. So in other words, oftentimes a director will get up, let's say the HR director, and he'll say, these next 6 items are something I'm going to give a report on. So the mayor has worked with our city administrator to kind of consolidate things and say, all right, how can we put all these 6 items, if they're somewhat formalities, give a report on all 6 items, but make them one item? That was the first thing. The second thing I'm really, really excited to announce, as you guys know, we did Shoji Tabuchi Day in Branson on August 31st. And now we announced last night, we read the proclamation into existence at the Board of Aldermen meeting for the second of our I'm colloquially calling them Song of Hope days, Branson Entertainer Holidays. It's going to be Glenn Robinson Grand Country Day. Glenn Robinson is the founder of that amazing institution in Branson. And it's really on behalf of the fact that he's instituted so many things. He helped found Ozark Mountain Christmas, which is a big deal going on right now, as well as the fact that he pretty much helped make Branson a year-round institution. At his facility, he's got the Missouri's first indoor water park. He's got an arcade, a buffet, a restaurant, yada, yada. Well, back in the day, the first restaurant that was in there was a chain. And the franchise duties on that chain said that it had to be open year-round. So isn't it funny how certain things can lead to great attributes for Branson, including, making us year-round. So I really want to congratulate Glenn. The actual day is going to be on November 19th. We're going to celebrate that at Grand Country Music Hall Friday night, 10:30 p.m. at their Branson Country USA taping. So I'm really excited about that. So during the public comment meeting, which we talked about a second ago, Cherry Webster, our good friend from Country Bluff, I always want to kind of highlight some of the things that she brings up because she takes the time to do the research and everything. Folks, she keeps talking about this idea that zoning bypassed planning and zoning. In other words, and that's against state statute. She brought up, I love what she's doing because she's taking the quotes from the actual aldermen, when these were given of why did we do this when this was brought up before, when she's asked, when the neighbors have hammered this. And so she keeps bringing up, and she calls them the 10 justifications for why planning and zoning was bypassed. And by reading the quotes back to the individuals who originally gave the quotes, I mean, how can you argue with yourself kind of thing, she's asked for reports which were promised to her by the chairman of planning and zoning. And basically last night, the city attorney and the city administrator said that they cannot give her any kind of report because, quote, those reports don't exist. Alderwoman Denham followed up with, well, they don't have to be official reports. She's just asking for a response to her questions. And Attorney Lebeck basically said that every single one of the aldermen would have to waive their attorney-client privilege. It's a very interesting thing to use. This has been used by him in the past. I can tell you it's not been used by previous city attorneys in the city of Branson. Anytime something is all 6 aldermen in the past were CC'd on an email, that email was sunshineable, the sunshine laws in Missouri. But of course, we have this new attorney who's using the attorney-client privilege. I'd call it an excuse. I did some research last night. It's not the first city to use this justification. However, so I would ask, then why isn't it the case that all these aldermen don't waive their attorney-client privilege on this so that they know? Because, they're using the justification, well, we might get sued by the developer or we might get sued by the community. In other words, community means the neighborhood, the board that oversees the neighborhood ordinances for Country Bluff. But again, folks, what Ms. Cherry Webster is saying is that there was already a violation. So there might already be grounds. What she wants them to do is rescind the zoning of that so it can go back to planning and zoning and just go through the proper process. So I'm gonna keep updating you guys on this because I think it's really important. The next thing, which has been something we've been handling for a long time, is the proposed animal ordinance, pet ordinance. Basically, anytime something is voted on at City Hall in an alderman meeting, it's got to be given 24 hours notice. It's actually more kosher to give it 48 hours notice that it's put online for or put in the newspaper. I think it's done both, actually, following those old traditions. But if something is motioned in at the Board of Aldermen meeting, then the citizens don't have the opportunity to see it. So the aldermen were asked to motion in some of the new changes, and the aldermen just did not feel comfortable doing that because of the fact that the citizens hadn't seen this yet. So I really appreciate that they're pushing this off. Listen, this has taken a long time to get this pet ordinance, but it's really important. And a lot of people are saying, wait a second, what are all these new changes? Why do I have to get these, license my pets and these fees and different things like that? So that we have really tweaked it. And when I say tweak it, I mean that cut down on the original bureaucratic mess that was proposed. And so I really appreciate that even though they're chipping away at some of this bureaucracy, they're still giving it the proper time. So that's going to be on the first meeting of January at this point. There's been multiple situations that have gone on long time in Branson as far as ordinances and things that have been pushed off. Some that are bad, some that are good. I would say maybe the burying the power lines thing last year, if you guys know that history, was kind of bad because it almost was like the double jeopardy. If you're charged with a crime and you're found innocent in this country, prosecuting attorneys can't bring it back up again and again and again just to keep trying you and seeing if a jury will convict you. It almost is what happened with the bury the power lines. It was a 3-3 tie back then on our board, and 3 didn't want to do it yet until we had the signatures amended on the taxation district, but it kept getting brought up. So I would say that was a bad example of it, but this pet ordinance is a good example of something that's taken a long time because they're doing their due diligence. I want to bring up something that Alderman Skane said because I agree with his notion, but I sort of disagree with his maybe how he's gone about this. So he talked about sharing frustration with the word not getting out there about the pet ordinance. So like I said, I do agree with him on this point because it's like, yeah, there's been, a lot of they had these public meetings in each ward. Ward 1, Ward 2, and Ward 3 all got together to discuss things. They've hammered it on their Facebook. They've talked about it in public, in the newspaper, etc. Transparency is not just a formality, is what I wrote in my notes here. Putting something on a website or holding a meeting, it doesn't necessarily get the word out there. And it's not just an automatic thing. You have to build an audience with the public in the same way that we do these live streams, in the same way that we did the live streams last year for the COVID-19 meetings. And we had 80,000 views on all our videos. So in other words, transparency is almost like, I wouldn't call it a skill, but I would call it an attribute maybe that certain people have that others don't, because I've built up a certain amount of following. Maybe some of these aldermen, who are talking on the board and saying it's frustrating that we haven't gotten the word out there. I would ask that they maybe devote, more of their Facebook, more of their online presence to only city-related items, and then perhaps you would have more people that were watching your post. and then you would have the better skill set to get those things out to the public, which I have. We'll talk about that more as I continue to strive to be on the board of aldermen. So stay tuned for an announcement on that. Little sneak peek. So we had an update from the Taney County Health Department. Some really interesting things. I appreciated that she just didn't get up there and talk about COVID, because of course that was something that affected our community and many communities around the world last year. But she talked about how the fact that a lot of people don't know this, but the Taney County Health Department wasn't something that was founded by the federal government or something that every single county has. In the 50s, the community voted that we want a health department, and the officials on that are actually elected. So she was just talking about kind of some of the ways that they're held accountable. I mean, man, they do so many things. I didn't even know about some of the things they have. They actually have a child passenger safety technician, somebody who you can take your car seat to, and they can show you how to install it. They can work on it, all kinds of things. Isn't that amazing? They also have same day records. You can actually go there, and if you're from Missouri, you can get your birth certificate printed out that very day. Now, if it's from a different state or far away, might take 2 or 3 days, but man, I've heard about things where you wait weeks and weeks to get a social security card or a birth certificate. So I really appreciated that. I got up and I asked her. I said she had talked about kind of the fact that they were winding down some of their necessary COVID services, and when I asked her, I was curious about, because I think there are some people who really only take their cues from some of these organizations. And asked her, obviously they call it a pandemic, meaning global. So I don't think, that the Taney County Health Department is going to be declaring an end to a global pandemic. But I did ask her, I said, is there a time where you imagine, is there a threshold by which you see the cases whereby your department will be making an announcement that they've disbanded their COVID unit, or will it be more quietly going away into the night? She talked about they don't really have a COVID unit. But right now, the CDC requires them to sort of investigate every single COVID case, and she says that she's kind of starting to see a time, maybe in the near future, where that won't be the case. So she was really, really optimistic, and that was probably the first time that I've heard a government health official speak like that. So I think the end is near on some of this stuff. Whether it was a nightmare for everybody, like I said last night, whether it was the disease or the response to the disease, regardless of how you feel about it, no one liked it. So I really appreciate seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and completely getting back to normal on everything related to that. So we had our city finance director, Jamie Roush, give the third quarter financials. We are up from 2019. We're not just comparing things to 2020, because that's a horrible comparison with the whole COVID year. We're comparing things to 2019. So we're up in the third quarter. That's really exciting. Another thing is, as we've talked about in the past, there's been a number of times where our credit rating has been downgraded. Separately, so not downgraded and then downgraded again, but downgraded, and then done once more last year. They talked about some different reasons, meaning high taxation, stagnant growth, high debt were some of the reasons that were given why they might have downgraded us. But what I'm excited to say is that, and I really want to give a lot of credit to Mayor Milton, because this was one of his big platforms when he was alderman and since he's become mayor, is the fact that he is really focused on budgets. And, when the credit rating agencies look at us, they don't just look at, what is our deficit, what is our debt, but they look at what is the city doing to enact things that can get us out of debt. We're doing priority-based budgeting. We're doing a lot of things, taking the necessary steps to get us out of there. And I really appreciate the credit rating agencies for recognizing that and upgrading our rating back where it should be. That helps in a lot of things, interest rates, etc. Another thing, as I'm kind of getting towards the end here, is park user fees. I serve on the Parks Board, and this is a really kind of interesting one. A lot of times we're working to make fees lower for citizens, but there are also times where it's not just necessary but proper to kind of upgrade some of the fees with inflation and different things like that. This is a great example. We are pro-business in the city of Branson. We do not want our government undermining private businesses. So the city, the Parks Board, owns a campground down by the lake. And many of the other campgrounds in this community have been concerned with the fact that our campground fees are much lower than other private campgrounds, kind of undercutting. And so, they had talked about a certain increase. We've actually increased that a little bit more to make us really right in line with where the other campgrounds are. And it's going to generate probably hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Parks Department, which is really fascinating to me because we always talk about tourism in Branson, tourism being so important, but we also want to have services that our citizens can use that are apart from tourism. And parks is such a big bailiwick for myself, mayor. So we're really excited about upping some of those fees, which will increase our ability to do things, create new trails, etc. So this is what we talked about last week, and so I'm happy to say they passed a 5% stipend for all employees and a 10% stipend for public safety. They're talking about doing it again next year as a recruitment tool, and so it's not long term as we work through our deficits in our budget. We'll work on a long term solution for that, but at least they did get a stipend, kind of like a bonus. And happy to say that we are taking care of our employees. Alderwoman Denham, in her alderman report towards the end of the meeting, was given the report that she's been asking for on fee waivers. I think she was concerned by some of the information in that, and I'm going to follow up on this one with you guys, but it did not include dates for her to go back and verify some of the things that were voted on. And then she says that there were some things that she feels were missing from that. So I'll follow up on that. Another thing that was mentioned in the alderman reports is that Joel Harnickle leaving, our planning director. He's going on to the private sector, bigger and better things for him. And there's many people can have different opinions on his job performance. A lot of people did feel that we needed a change, and I'm excited about the change. I'm excited about a new day. We have a new board. We're going to have even newer board next April, God willing. And so it's really exciting that we're getting some new people in there, because sometimes only changes can be made when you have a new mindset, a new way of looking at things. So I wish Joel all the luck in the world. I told him last night, good luck, man. I've worked with him since middle of 2018 when I've been on the planning commission. But we're making some changes, So, this was also brought up, and this is really important. We are meeting almost every Wednesday for the Ozark Mountain Christmas Coalition that we have formed, which I'm really excited has been a great success. We've got this Facebook group. We've got over 1,200 people on it in just over a week. Ozark Mountain Christmas is alive and well. We're seeing it everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. Part of my role on that committee is to make sure all these businesses are decorating for Christmas or putting the Ozark Mountain Christmas logo on their social media and on their websites. And, I think it was Mayor Milton who talked about the fact that, we also used to have on every single one of our hotel marquees, welcome veterans for Veterans Week. And we still have some of those, but maybe not all of them. So I'm going to take that on as well, just in the same way as I'm going to make sure that they have Ozark Mountain Christmas on their marquees during the season. I want to make sure they get the veterans back, because we are the most veteran-friendly city in the country. I believe that. The mayor believes that, and we need to continue that. So really exciting to work on veterans. That's all in the kind of in the scope of Ozark Mountain Christmas. That's within the season in November. So really excited about that. I want to finish up here with a little comment about some of the things that I talked about last week. We talked about buildings. We talked about the new police station, and how I'm a personnel over buildings guy. And I also threw in there the fact that the chamber has a new building. Well, I kind of got some information on that because, hey, people watch these reports. I'm happy to say that there were no taxpayer dollars used on that new building. That's very good to know. I think we always talk about we want to avoid some of the talking points that get thrown out there and get really instantiated within our community that I don't feel are accurate. We've talked about with our shows. The old people are dying, correct? The shows are dying, incorrect. All these different things. So I think it's also important on our side to avoid the same kind of talking. So when we talk about new buildings, we just throw the kitchen sink in there. I think one thing is that we've heard that it was a more central location why they got that building. But, I think in discussing with some really relevant people who deal with the chamber, there are a lot more meeting rooms. It's an updated building, things like that, to go 30 years into the future. So I thought that was important to really give an update to you guys and say kind of some of the things that I've heard on some of the justifications for that. And I think it's exciting. We do have a new meeting place for our community, and there have been a lot of things that have happened there. A lot of meetings that I've attended there, and it is a good building in a central location. Even though the other place perhaps was as well, it was older, it was a little bit dilapidated. And the example was used: if you get a new car, who's to say we don't need a new car? So as long as taxpayer dollars weren't used for that, that's pretty exciting. And I just want to say that, I advocate a certain way of doing things, and perhaps there are other entities in our community who have a different way of seeing things. So I'm excited about building those relationships where, we can have these discussions. I'll never back down from my original opinions, but at the same time, people can kind of know where our starting places are, and then we can kind of come together and find happy ground, and then discuss things. Whereas in the past, it might have felt like, well, I really can't discuss these things with these individuals because we just have such a different philosophy. But I'm glad that we've been able to still stay in our certain camps on the way we view things, but also have a little bit more discussion so I can get the correct information out to you guys. So I appreciate y'all joining us so much today. I'm going to be signing off. Take care.